Welcome to Charter Local Edition. I'm Pete Stein, and I'm joined by State Representative Stephanie Klick from District 91. We really appreciate your time. Thanks for coming.
Thanks for having me today.
How excited are you about this upcoming legislative session that gets underway January 13?
Very excited. Opportunities to do great things for the state of Texas.
It's interesting that you only, in theory, you only have sessions every other year, but I suspect the process for you is year-round.
It is. Many of the committees that members serve on will have interim hearings in the interim portion of the off cycle, if you will. I'm usually down there several times a month for several days for hearings, meetings, talking with different agency heads.
When you hear from your constituents, what are their main concerns as we enter this legislative session?
They are very concerned about the immigration issue. They're concerned about fiscal matters. In the last several years, we've seen more of the public pay attention to not only what happens in Washington, but also what happens in Austin. And I think that's healthy.
And there's a big difference between Washington and Austin, isn't there?
Yes, there is. In Austin, we have to balance our budget. It's required by the Constitution. We cannot deficit spend like they do in Washington, D.C.
We hear a lot about gridlock in Washington, too. It seems like the state legislature is a little more successful in getting things done.
I would very much agree. There are times when there are differences of opinion on an issue. But I think the bottom line is we all want to do what's right by the folks in our district and for Texas overall. We sometimes agree on how to get to that solution.
I know one of your primary concerns is constituent services, and people don't always realize what their state representative can do for them.
That is very true. Our office can help citizens if they're having difficulty with a government agency or program. My staff is ready to assist them in helping them make the right contacts to facilitate a resolution to their problem. We also get a number of calls in our office that are about federal issues. And although we may not be able to solve those problems for them, we can certainly direct them to the proper people to be contacting.
What types of services are we talking about?
It may be something like child support. Our office was able to assist a veteran who had recently returned in fighting in Iraq. In the course of his service to our country, he was injured and had lost his eyesight and was in a nursing home. And it was his dream and goal to get into an apartment and live independently, and our office was able to assist him with that.
So this was a young man living in a nursing home.
26 years old. And, his real disability was his lack of eyesight, due to his injury. There have been a lot of headlines about veterans' issues and poor services that have been provided to our men in uniform returning. Texas has set up a special office where we help facilitate veteran services for Texas residents that are returning and need help.
Certainly a lot of Texans are veterans.
Absolutely. In fact, we're one of the biggest states where veterans return after their service to our country.
Talking about some of the other issues that you'll be addressing, one that keeps coming up is transportation and roads. What can the legislature do?
One of the things that the legislature did do and the voters approved on November 4th was Proposition 1. And Proposition 1 will provide additional funding to transportation projects. They cannot be used for toll roads. I think we've all heard from our constituents that they're all tolled out and would really like to see us return to a system where we've got free roadways. But right now, that will add about $1.7 billion a year to the fund for roads. But TxDOT estimates that we really need about $4 billion a year. So next session, you're going to see a lot of debate and discussion on where do we find those additional billions.
Given that discrepancy, are more toll roads likely to be in the future?
I think the legislature has lost our appetite for that. I think that we're going to go back to a situation where we've got more free roads.
Let's talk also about education, if you have a moment, because it seems like there's going to be a lot of emphasis on curriculum as well as financing.
Absolutely. On the financing end, of course, there have been a number of school districts that have sued the state because they do not believe that we are providing adequate funding for education. Those are still working their way through the courts. School finance is very complicated, and what we would do for a large urban school district may be detrimental in the way of funding for a small rural district. So there's going to be a lot of discussion about how and if we properly fund schools. As far as curriculum, my office last session was contacted many, many times. In fact, it was probably one of the hottest issues last legislative session, the Common Core. And a lot of the parents in Texas are not supportive of that approach in education. It's a one-size-fits-all approach from the federal government.
I know there were some sweeping changes in the last legislative, and now you want to go back and look at those and see what adjustments need to be made?
Yes. We changed some of the graduation requirements so that students that were not intending to go to college had a career pathway so that they too would be able to have a bright future. That we haven't yet graduated our first class of students under the new guidelines, but we think that that is the best approach for Texas.
You mentioned earlier the state budget, and I guess that's really where the legislature, that's where you find out where its priorities are.
Absolutely. In past sessions, we have had shortfalls where there have been the need to cut spending in a number of programs. This year we've got a pretty healthy reserve, which is a good thing, but it will also be a balancing act because many people would like for us to spend more money on programs or create new programs to use up those surplus funds. We'll have to be very careful.
So what's the process of how you go about figuring out where to spend this money?
Well, it all begins when you file a bill and in the committee process. Not all legislation costs money. Bills that do cost money have attached to them what's called a fiscal note, where the agency goes in and estimates what the cost will be or the impact on the state budget. And then from there, you may pass a program, but if it's not funded in the appropriations process, then it may not actually happen.
Is there any message you would want to get out to your constituents as you go into this legislative session?
I would encourage my constituents to contact our office. We do a newsletter to try to keep people informed of what's going on in the district, any new programs that might be of benefit to our constituents. If they are having difficulty with a state agency or a program, to please contact our office. We're happy to help.
Stephanie Klick, the state representative from District 91, we appreciate your time. Thanks for coming in today.
Thank you.